Yes guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson football channel. I've had enough. This is going to be one of those videos where I sit down and just basically try and articulate as best as I possibly can my personal understanding about where Chelsea are at right now and why, to be quite honest, I've had enough. I've given up on the season. I said it in the 6 Things We Learnt video. From the top layer, I think there's more than enough players at this club that simply aren't good enough players for Chelsea. But at the same time, whenever these things happen, the easiest thing to do is to go straight on the back of the manager and say, he's not the right man, someone else can do it. I'm going to talk about the truths that I think are the case right now at Chelsea. We're going to look at the problems. We're going to look at where these problems really began. And to be quite honest, my biggest question that I want to answer for myself during this dialogue between myself, the microphone, and the lens of the camera, and hopefully you guys in the comments down below, is I want to know the answer to what is the process? What is this project? What is this thing that we keep talking about, that horrifying buzzword that just does my flipping nut in, that we're supposed to be allowing to be like the justification as to why things aren't going very well? We're constantly reminded that this is obviously a big project. It's been a takeover for multiple billions of pounds. We've gone from an era of instability where things certainly weren't perfect, but obviously as fans we had a pretty perfect time in direct comparison to what we're experiencing now. Under Roman Abramovich, we won tons of trophies. Was it sustainable? Evidently not, because then as soon as Roman Abramovich is gone, and therefore as a result of that, a load of other staff and the day-to-day running of the club changes, and then the on-the-pitch results dramatically change also, and where Chelsea actually are is a totally different story to where we were. So as fans, it's difficult. We don't want to accept it. I feel as though there are definitely things that are unacceptable, but I do say one thing, and that is that it was always going to be tough. If anybody thought that just because a new owner came in who's more than happy to spend a load of money, if we thought that this was going to be, all right, no worries then, we can keep on winning trophies, that would have been a foolish thing to think about as well. Look at other clubs when they lose managers. When Manchester United lost Sir Alex Ferguson, it had the same effect as Chelsea losing Roman Abramovich. The only difference was Chelsea needed to hire and fire loads of managers to win trophies. Manchester United had one guy that would just keep on winning them trophies. When things change, results change. That is the way football is. Same as anything in life. When there's action, there's a reaction. All of these things happen. This is basic chemistry, basic physics. Everything aligns to the fact that Chelsea was set to have a period of time where we were going to struggle, where things were not going to be okay. When Todd Boehly came in, we spent a lot of money. And I'm going to keep on talking today about spending a lot of money because for me, what the proof is from the results that we're seeing and the lack of progress that we've evidently seen from minute 1 all the way through to the middle of December, beginning of December now in 2023, Chelsea haven't really made any progress whatsoever within this process. And now the money is actually a problem because it was never sustainable to believe that Chelsea could spend 200-300 million every summer, every January until we get this right. Unfortunately, because we've spent so heavily in the past 3 windows, there are now even more questions as to whether or not the club can even think about a short-term plan that sees Chelsea back competing for European places in the Premier League. The problem that I have is that Pochettino isn't doing very well right now, but I can't off the top of my head think of a good reason why it would make sense to fire him. That's the way that we've always been conditioned in recent years when Chelsea's form is as bad as it is now, when performances of individuals and just the team as a whole, there's no cohesion, there isn't really any tactics to really talk about it top line. The easiest thing to do is just say, well, I've had enough of this manager. I've had enough of this. Let's change it and hope that something's going to come for it. We saw that last season. Graham Potter wasn't the guy. Frank Lampard then clearly wasn't the guy either. Pochettino's come in, and you could say he's also not the guy. Thomas Tuchel, he was the guy. He won us a Champions League. Things don't go very well, and then he's gone. He's no longer the guy. Chelsea at the moment are looking around, and we're just basically having to accept and understand that all of the guys ain't the guys. And that also sits on the shoulders of the players. So the problem I have with the process is that there are other clubs right now in the Premier League that have projects that are seemingly doing very well within their process. Newcastle United had this massive takeover, very similar to that of Chelsea, but again, we're talking about billions upon billions and hundreds of those billions. They don't just go and spend it all in one go, though, not just because of FFP, but because they understand that just throwing a load of money at a project is not necessarily going to equate to immediate success. What do Newcastle do? They spend a bit more money than they were spending before. They get in a very good manager. They have a little idea as to what a 5-year plan looks like, and they are slowly working towards building a culture. And in order to build a culture, everybody needs to be on the same page. What Newcastle have done, and this is why Eddie Howe is doing so well, they've taken the players that really wanted to be there, that wanted to fight, that were actually moldable into something, dropped in a load of salt and pepper on top to make it a really tasty team. As a result of that, they're in the Champions League. They're looking as though this season they could actually compete for a Premier League title. That is a project that is in process, that makes sense, and it can be identified as an ongoing success. Aston Villa. Unai Emery comes in, a man who many people argue could have done the same at Arsenal if he'd have had the same kind of backing. Mikel Arteta at Arsenal is now working wonders. They're top of the Premier League. They came close last season, was given time. Once again, didn't just throw a load of money to build a brand new squad all in one go when things weren't good. When Unai Emery left Arsenal, all of a sudden, salt and pepper's added. All of a sudden, Arsenal competing at the top of the Premier League. Aston Villa the same, Newcastle the same, Arsenal the same. The problem is the project that Chelsea have decided to undertake has been one where they think that throwing money is going to simply provide an immediate answer to a situation that was always going to take time to change. When Roman Abramovich left, it changed not only the day-to-day identity of Chelsea, but it also meant that we had to kind of say goodbye to an era that was not only dominated by having a hiring and firing owner who would spend a lot of money, yes, but what we forget to realise is during that period there was player stability. Right now, there isn't a single player at Chelsea Football Club who you can honestly look at and say, right, this is going to be our leadership cornerstone for the next 10 years. There are great players individually that have potential to be leaders, but the only player who's actually above the age of 30 who's actually any good is Thiago Silva, and he's nearly 40 and he's basically finished. So with that being said, Chelsea are looking at a bunch of 24-year-olds, 26-year-olds who have had experience, won a Champions League. We're talking Reece James here, done pretty well, great players individually again, but there isn't really anything that we can just lean our shoulders on right now when it comes to playing personnel. And as a result of all of that, I think we realise that, and we're just a bit like, well, okay, if that's the case, you can't go out and buy a Makelele, a Lampard, an Ashley Cole, a Terry, a Cech, because those players aren't available anymore. And these are the ones that cost you 150 million and we need 6 of them. So that's $1 billion gone just by buying some leaders. That isn't going to work. So as a result of that, Todd Boehly has been like, all right, we're going to be a bit screwed for a while. Let's just go and spend $1 billion on a load of youngsters, hope they can all work together, and then we can just use this idea of a project, and we're in the process, it's going to take a while, as a distraction. I've been done with being distracted now. That's what the purpose of this video is. We need to understand right now that this process and this project has not worked. It's not working, and as a result of spending all of that money, we have actually put ourselves in an even bigger mess. And the reason we're in an even bigger mess is because, unfortunately, when you spend all of that money and you buy players, there is an expectation that you're going to get somewhere. We're so far away from it, which does lead us to the idea, once again, that we might have to spend loads more money, which is absolutely crazy. There's a big problem with that also. When Chelsea try and spend a lot of money on top players, we've already been through the top players that we can sign by spending lots of money. Enzo, Caicedo, Mudryk, let's just use those 3 as an example. These players joined because of Chelsea's history, because the project was still new, because they felt important coming into something that was going to grow as a result of their presence into something bigger and better. Now, the kind of players that Chelsea need to make the squad better, because clearly these players just are not good enough, a large proportion of them, These players are now going to look the same way that Enzo and Caicedo looked, but they're going to see something where the process of the project is now further down the line. The issues about that project and whether or not it will or will not succeed are now even further towards this is not going to succeed. So therefore, the quality of player that Chelsea could have bought in, they're not going to want to come anymore. These players that we could potentially buy, let's just say, off the top of my head, 3 players right now that could be brilliant signings for Chelsea. Let's go Victor Osimhen, Rafael Leao, and Mike Maignan from AC Milan. Those 3 players would solve a fair few of Chelsea's issues. Osimhen will score a load of goals. Leao's actually got the ability to be a winger and create things and score goals. And Mike Maignan is a significantly better goalie than Robert Sanchez. All 3 of these players should be lifting Champions League trophies above their head. Should be every single season competing to win the league in whichever team and whatever league they're playing in. These players are going to take one look at this Chelsea project and be like, bloody hell. If I join this Chelsea team, then it's literally up to me. I am literally the guy carrying the weight of a beautifully historic football club on my shoulders because those that are there at the moment aren't quite doing it. And it also leads us to talk about Pochettino. We're going to talk about him in a second. But the problem is that this project is getting to a point now where after a while, you can't just keep on calling it the process. You can't keep calling it the long-term Chelsea project and it's all going to be fine because it's getting worse. It's getting to a point now where, yes, we have to keep referencing how much we've spent. Yes, we have to keep referencing just how many new players there are because if you don't do that, then where on earth do we sit with the understanding of what this process and project is? And we are absolutely at that point now. Chelsea, without European football, but also with the process that we're in right now, we're not an attractive prospect anymore. So the quality that we need to bring players in and actually change the situation is not going to happen. It's going to be incredibly difficult. And it leads me to talk about Mauricio Pochettino, who is the man who's been trusted to come in to galvanise this group of individually talented players, make us a team, bring us some cohesion. We are no further ahead than we were with Frank Lampard at the end of last season than Graham Potter just over a year ago. Chelsea are literally nowhere better than what we were then, and since then we have spent even more money. This is the depths of the mess that we have created, that we are in, that right now I just don't see a way out of it. And I think the issue is Mauricio Pochettino is undoubtedly a decent manager, absolutely. But when Mauricio Pochettino turns around to a cameraman after this match at Stamford Bridge and he says, the players gave everything, I'm not disappointed, or words to that effect, I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, has someone literally programmed you there as if you are some kind of artificial intelligence website that has gone on a little bender for the weekend and got drunk? Because that is absolutely not the truth of what we've seen. That is where the embarrassment comes in. That is where the discord between fans like me, fans like you, and Chelsea Football Club come in. When the manager, who is supposed to be the saviour for the project that so far has been a failure, is coming and looking at the lens of a camera and saying, I'm not disappointed, the players gave everything. That is the moment that we realise here that we are doomed. Because if Pochettino genuinely believes that the players out there at Old Trafford last night gave everything, then we are really in a mess that is an incomprehensible mess compared to any layers of mess that we've ever been in before. This is literally like going on a 7-day bender, Jesse style from Breaking Bad, and then the cleaner don't come. This is going south. This house ain't worth nothing no more. And that is the facts about this situation. And I honestly do wonder if Pochettino is literally being told, you know what, like, this is a process. This is a long-term project. They're all really young, you know, just save face a little bit for the players, please, in your press conferences. We know how much Chelsea media train their players. I know it personally because I've worked with individual players at the club, at Cobham, and I know that there's a lot of things they're not allowed to say. and they have to answer in a certain way, and there are people sat there when they're doing interviews with mugs like me who are basically looking for any kind of ambiguous wording that could go wrong in the way that the players are seen. I would not be surprised if this is also what's happening at Chelsea right now. And I think the biggest problem is I don't think Pochettino is a bad manager. I just think he's doing a really bad job right now and he's got to pull his finger out. The one thing I will say to wrap up this video, and I'm going to go into more detail about the future and what it could look like if this Pochettino experiment doesn't work. I'm going to go through that in more detail in an upcoming video. But the one thing I will say right now about the Chelsea players that I actually think are good enough and that can definitely be good enough moving forward, other than Cole Palmer going forward, and Christopher Nkunku I do think is going to be brilliant, but he's not played, so it's hard to even judge him within this conversation. What Chelsea have right now is some good defenders. I think Levi Colwill is a good defender. I think Reece James, when he's fit and actually really fit, can be a good defender. Silva is, but like he's getting old. Let's forget about it. Disasi, good defender. Benoit Badiashile, who can't get near the team today for whatever reason, is also a really good defender. Chelsea, defensively, do have good defenders. So maybe, just maybe, at some stage or another, when we understand that this project and this process hasn't really worked, we've spent a load of money, tried to create an attack that is just non-existent in the majority of senses for the majority of games, maybe it is the right time to just be like, okay, let's be brutal here. There are some players that are good, some that are not, some that are going to work moving forward, and some that are not. And as a result of that, maybe a defence-minded coach could be the foundations to create the stepping stones to actually make a movable in the right direction project. Good defenders with a good defensive coach. Hasn't that been the cornerstone of what has made Chelsea successful? Antonio Conte, Thomas Tuchel, Jose Mourinho. We don't have the luxury of the Ancelotti era where we've just got players all over the midfield, all over the attack that can just come up and score this goal, that goal, week in, week out. So maybe, just maybe, a defensive coach is going to be needed because right now we are the bare bones. The project, in my opinion, ain't worked and it's pretty dead right now. And the process in which we can view that project is failing week on week on week. I don't know where the next good, solid run is going to come from. Yes, the horrifying run of fixtures is technically over, but we've struggled against even the worst teams. So I don't know when things are going to change here at Chelsea. The players aren't good enough. Pochettino is not doing enough. And all of the solutions that we think we've been throwing in the first place from above aren't working either. Chelsea are a mess. Massive mess. Thoughts in the comments down below. Come on, you Blues.